All right, so we have a on-site technical assessment document here that Henry has created and is working on. That's full of some of the questions that we've come up with at Shipped that we think are pretty good indicators given about an hour or so with a candidate. Gives pretty good heuristics to their abilities or capabilities in certain areas of web development. We're going to go through one of those today and and see how far we can get. I have not completed these challenges myself. Actually, I think I've done this second one before, but it was many months ago. So we're just going to go do this first one because I have not done this. I have not created a full solution for all of this. And the way that these questions are set up is incremental, kind of in an incremental fashion, right? So unlike what you're kind of seeing here on the document, which is all three parts of the question all at once, the candidate would actually only ever receive, part one, and then once they fully understand and implement a solution that solves part one, then we'd move on to part two, and same for part three, and so on and so forth, and hopefully get through all of the different parts by the end of the technical interview. The reason it's set up this way is simply so that there's a firm grasp around why we're moving forward towards this step, right? It's pretty. For instance, with this promises one, if a candidate doesn't know what a promise is, let's say like if a candidate doesn't know what promises or promise.all is, which is what this challenge eventually leads to them implementing, then there's no way they're going to be able to create a promise.all function on their own from scratch, right? If they can't use the native promise.all method that's given to them by the web API inside of a browser, then they probably won't make it to the next step, right? So we're trying to basically gauge what is the depth of knowledge that a candidate has. Can we, if we give them questions incrementally, can we see how far that knowledge limit goes in a certain domain? Okay, so this first question here, I'm going to try to be as candid as possible when things don't make sense to me or when I get stuck on my solution and can't figure out what to do next. And hopefully I don't make too much of a fool of myself by doing that, and maybe shed a little bit of light around how I might approach a problem like this if I was given it. Again, I do have a little bit of a benefit in one, I'm not in a technical interview setting right now. I'm not in an on-site interview for a job, and two, I am able to see all three questions at once, right? So looks like we use get elements by class names, right? I can just see that. That's kind of given to me. So I do have a little bit of a leg up, and that's we should mention those caveats here in the beginning. But we're going to go ahead and go with and see how far I get with that, and we can kind of talk about what those caveats might have given me at the end. Okay, so question one. On Ship.com, there are 4 medium-sized icons under always fresh, fast, and friendly. Using the JavaScript console in the Chrome DevTools, write some code to hide all of these icons. The icons do not have to be removed from the DOM, but must not be visible to the user. Hint, these icons have a class name of benefit icon. Okay, so let's open up a new tab and go to shipped.com. All right, so it's just Ship's marketing page is what it looks like here, and we can see immediately here's that always fresh, fast, and friendly heading that the question one described, and there's our 4 icons. So if we open up the tools, just going to go ahead and clear out the console here. If we go ahead and inspect some of these elements, we'll probably be able to see. Let's just make sure that okay, yeah, right. So the hint wasn't lying to us. They do indeed have, at least this first one has a benefit icon class name. I only assume the rest of them do as well. Okay, cool. So they all have this similar class name, and it seems like that's actually on. I thought these were images. Oh, the icon is applied as a background image URL to a div. That's kind of interesting. We should probably make those images with alt tags. Anyway, let's go ahead. So let's think about how we might write a solution that would collect all 4 of those and hide them on the DOM. Again, obviously, I have the benefit of of knowing we're going to use get elements by class name, but I still don't think it's too much of a stretch to assume that would have been used anyway, right? That the hint itself, where icons have a class name, a shared class name among DOM elements, right? That's a pretty big hint that we're going to need some sort of web API method to collect certain DOM nodes, right? To collect elements from the page that have something common amongst them that's unique in the document. And it turns out it's going to be this class name of benefit icon. Okay, so that exists on every single node that get elements by class name. But we're just gonna, let's just use it on the document, right? So we'll spit out the document here, and the document gives us access to a get element by ID, get element by class name, right? Tons of stuff. These are similar methods that I would expect a candidate to know, same as query selector or query selector all. If they have any familiarity with vanilla JavaScript and its implementation with the DOM, then they know these methods are at their disposal, right? And that would be, I would expect a candidate to know that. So, okay, get elements by class name, and we're looking for, what was it again? Benefit icon. Oops. Okay, benefit icon, I think is the name. Oop, I misspelled it there. Disqualified immediately if you can't get it right the first time. Okay, so that gives us the four elements right here, the 4 in the node list, and now we need to find a way to basically hide all of those from the DOM, right? So we have our collection, and notice what this says here. Like, notice some people do get kind of tripped up on this at first. Notice that this says HTML collection 4, right? It's an HTML collection. It kind of looks like an array, right, with the brackets here, but it's not an array, right? It's this HTML collection element. Similar to an array, but not quite the same, right? We can see some differences immediately if we tried to say, for instance, like map, like if we wanted to map over each of these. We see that that's not a function the way that it would be on something like an array, right? So that's maybe the first gotcha that candidates should probably pay attention to. It's not really a gotcha even, right? Too, it says it right here. You just gotta kind of like look for what the return value is of this get elements by class name function. And this is true of everything, right? It's the same of document query selector for whatever is going to be, let's just query select for all the divs. Query selector all if I want a list, right? So this gives back like a node list, which is slightly different, right? And if the candidate really wanted to, we allow the candidates to look up, use MDN to look up definitions of things, right? We're not restricting them to not use Google to search for things that they don't understand, right? I actually don't know the difference between a node list and an HTML collection. So I know they're different from an array, but they're fairly similar. I don't know the differences from each other. Not sure that's even important here, but interesting that they're both a thing. So query selector looks like it returns this node list, and get elements by ID returns an HTML collection. So we need a way to basically map over those or just loop over them in order to change something about each of the nodes that we have in our collection, right? Each of these nodes. So something else we should probably point out, right? If you select an element inside of the Chrome DevTools, you'll notice it puts this little == $0, and then it says this little tooltip kind of hovers over where it says use $0 in the console to refer to this element. So if we type in $0 right now after I've selected it, it gives us that element. If we're trying to maybe take a step back and look at what we want out of each of these elements, right? How are we actually going to hide them from the DOM? Well, there's probably lots of ways that we could do it, right? You could probably set like a display none style property on it, or set the opacity to 0. The challenge itself doesn't really make any comment about, does it need to be hidden by screen readers, or does it just need to be hidden at a visible level? or visibility level. I don't know. So it doesn't. I don't think it actually matters which solution we go with. We're just trying to hide them in any way we can. But the reason I brought up this $0 was to look at an element individually, how we might actually look at what that element's styles are, right? So there's two ways to do that, and or really two ways to look at types of styles that an element might have, which is either its class names or its style attribute style attribute properties. So it doesn't actually look like this thing has any style attribute directly on it, right? It just has this class. So we can look up what an element has. All the class, again, like more things that look like arrays, but they're not quite arrays. This is a DOM token list. Another thing that I don't know how it differentiates from, an HTML collection, because it just looks like an array of strings here, except for this value medium equals something, or medium something. That's interesting. Right, so we get this list of class names, and or this class list, which gives us the class names that we see up here, right? Medium 3 columns text center benefit, medium 3 columns text center benefit. I guess the value is just putting them all in one string. Anyway, the other way would be to look at $0.0.style, right? And style would give us this object of all the styles that are applied to this element currently. Most of them are unset, unsurprisingly, because this element up here doesn't have a style attribute on it. So, of course, they're not set. So let's go ahead, just because I don't want to create, like, the challenge doesn't ask you to, fuss with CSS. We're not going to create a class. Let's just apply or change styles on the element directly. So we're going to use this style object, or this style property on each of the elements, in order to hide it. So if we do $0.0.style.display, and we print out what that is. Right now it's just empty string, which doesn't actually make a whole lot of sense, because it's surprising to me that it doesn't give the style of what it might have computed from like a CSS class or a CSS property. But if we set it to something, we can use getters and setters. If we set it to none, we should expect that element to disappear, right? And it does. It just completely hides itself. In fact, it was removed from the DOM entirely. It wasn't actually just hidden. So let's display that back how it was. Oops, not black, display block. Okay, so if we remove all of them, I basically imagine this entire section really to probably just kind of disappear, right? This row would become empty, more or less. So maybe instead of doing that, maybe we want to use opacity and set it to 0. Right now it just kind of hides it, but doesn't actually shift anything on the DOM. It's still sitting here, right? It's still there, but it's just hidden from view. Let's go with that just for now. I don't want to remove things from the DOM. Even though the question makes no distinction. Okay, so we know how to do it for an individual element, right? We apply this setter for opacity on the style object, right? And that was for $0, again, referred to that individual element. Let's undo that real quick, actually. So we'll set it back to 1, so it comes back into view. And now let's go back to our document. What did we have? We had this benefit icon. We have our collection. So a lot of people would probably then reach for, like a as we said before, a map or maybe like a for each. And notice that these are not properties, right? They're not functions that are available on this list. Even though it kind of looks like an array, it's not an array. So we're gonna have to translate it somehow, right? We're gonna have to get access to, if this is the way we want it to loop over, right? Another way maybe would be, I think you could probably do like a for loop. Let's try that first, actually. So you could do like a for, is it for in or for of? For of. One of them is for objects and one of them is for like array iterables. For of is for over iterable objects, including built-in string, array, and array-like arguments or node list objects. Haha! Node list was what query selector returns. I wonder if it works for HTML collections, like what get element class name returns. Let's find out. So if we did like for let node of, well, let's assign this to a variable first. So let's say var benefit icon nodes is equal to this HTML collection, right? And then we said for let node in, was it in? Was it of? It was of. Benefit node icons. Let's just console log out the node. I just want to see if this even works. Okay, cool. It does. It works out fine. So this is one way of iterating over these elements, right? So we could do this and say, let's say instead of just console logging out the node, now that we know that we have an actual element, we could say node, we did what we did before, node.opacity is equal to 0. Oh, sorry, node.style.opacity is equal to 0. Okay, so then it hit all of them. There we go. That's what the challenge asked for, right? Write some code to hide all of these icons. Boom, done. Let's actually go through a few other ways that you might attack this problem or approach this problem. So using a for of loop is one way. Another way, if you wanted to get access, let's say as before we were trying to use like a map or a for each function, and kind of a more functional approach than using a for loop. Maybe we would have this, so we have this benefit icons or benefit icon nodes, right? Which are, oh no, did I just lose it? No, there, it's still there. So we want to get access to like a for each or something, let's say, right? So another way than using for of would be to use this thing called array from, right? And do that for the benefit icons. Now we have access to all of these different methods that are part of the array prototype, right? A third way that's maybe a little bit more modern is to spread. I actually don't know if this is going to work in the Chrome Dev Tools. The benefit icon nodes, is that what we called it? Oh, it does. Okay, cool. Right. So then this for each is a function here too, right? So this is a spread operator. If you guys haven't seen that, spread operator for like list elements, and we're spreading it into an object literal here. So open closing brackets. We're just creating an object and then spreading all of those nodes into that array, so that we get access to something like for each. So now we could say, for each node, maybe we say node.style.opacity equals 1. Let's bring them all back. There they all are, right? I think there's a few other ways to do this, right? I think there's you could probably, I think I saw somebody had tried to basically iterate over every iterable function inside of the array prototype and just map that to the node list or the HTML list prototype. That seems like a little overkill and a little dangerous. That might be another solution though, right? It's not like we can discredit them if they try it that way. I think there's at least 4 or 5 ways that you can figure out how to get an HTML collection into something that is iteratable. Iterable, just iteratable. I think I say that wrong. Okay, so we've done part 1, right? Write some code to hide all of these icons. Cool. That's what we did. We did exactly that. We wrote a bunch of stuff. Where'd it go? There we go. To hide all the icons. Cool. All right, question 2, right? So now we would go on. Candidate solved question 1. Now we say, okay, very nice job. Let's move on to question 2. So it looks like you used get elements by class names. And if they don't use this, I guess they could try to call, like another way that you might approach this would be like we'd probably just say, can you implement this a little more generically? But if they tried to click on this, right, and they now have like $0, or maybe they would click on this thing. No. This. I think there's a way that you could like call like get elements by class name, or sorry, not call element by class name, but just like query selector all or something like this, right? And then call for here of like benefits. What was it? Benefit icon, right? And actually, you could probably do that from the document, right? This actually gives the same answer, right? This is exactly the same thing as saying. Let's see if they. I don't think they're actually going to be equal because it's like trying to equate to, or they might be the same reference. Let's see. Document.get elements by class name. Benefit icon. Yeah, so it'd be like trying to compare arrays, so like it's always going to return false. But they do basically return the same thing, right? If we look at what that guy returns and we look at what this guy returns, they're pretty much the same thing. One is an HTML collection, one is a node list. So again, I don't know the difference between those two. So I do wonder what, if like I guess Henry hasn't encountered a candidate that attempts it this way. I wonder what he would do if you say like, you know, query selector all. Maybe then the challenge becomes instead of implementing your own get elements by class name, you implement your own query selector all. Yeah, that could, I mean, I guess that could kind of work the same. I'll have to ask him about that though. Okay, so question 2, we would like you to now implement your own get elements by class name function. So here's really where like the actual challenge comes into play, right? The first one is just, do they know how to do things on the DOM? Do they know they get class elements or get elements by class name exists? Can they use it? Do they understand the difference between a node list or an HTML collection as opposed to an array, so that they can actually loop over these things? That's all the first one challenges, right? Pretty easy stuff. It's the second one here where we get to the real meat of trying to implement something. So get elements by class name, where basically we should be able to, I don't really understand how this works. Like, is it, since we're not calling it on like an actual node element, right? There's no document.get element by class names. Is it just meant to start at the document level of the DOM? Is that the intention here? That's fine. Yeah, we could do that. So get elements by class names is a function. So let's copy this over, put it in our console, and get element by class name. So it's going to take in this class name, which is a string, and now we basically need a way to iterate over everything and figure out if it has a class name that matches the class name argument that was passed. So the interesting part here is just to recognize that this is some sort of iteration, right? Or it's something that you will be looping through. Now there's different kinds of loops. I suppose I shouldn't say it's an iteration because I actually don't know if this can be implemented iteratively, but it's certainly a loop of some kind, right? And there's two kinds of loops. There is an iterative kind of loop, like a for loop, which has a very clear start and end. And then there's something like a recursive loop, which has no real end other than like a conditional that stops the recursion from happening. And it seems like I'm curious if this can be implemented in an iterative fashion, right? Because I'm not sure how you would actually know when you've reached the end of a DOM tree, for instance, because you could have technically infinitely nested elements within each other. So it seems like you'd always have to keep checking children after children after children. You would never know until you reach an element that doesn't have children. I'm pretty sure that's something we can, let's go back to looking at like, okay, so $0 dot children, child element count. Okay, so that gives us, so that's interesting. So that gives us these 4 elements, which is the children of this guy. So it only gives us the direct children, right? Because I think each of these have the children, because this is the wrapper around that benefit icon that we hid in the first place. Okay, so that seems like that might come in handy. Child element count, what is children? So that's that HTML. Okay, another HTML collection. Oh, so what if they did? Oh no, sorry. I was gonna. There might be another solution other than using document.querySelector, document.get elements by class name to use $0 of children and maybe loop over the children. I'm just trying to wonder if candidates can basically get around implementing this. This might be like shoehorning them into a solution. Maybe not. I mean, this is definitely the most like expected, the most expected approach, right? But that doesn't mean we shouldn't account for the unexpected approach. Man, I've lost my tabs. Okay, cool. So so child element count, we have children. What else did we have? There were a ton of other child, first element, last child element, child nodes. How is that different from, oh wait, that returns these text elements too. Like these H4s, is it? Maybe these P tags? I don't know what these guys are. It seems like they're both. So that's like the H4 and the P tag, I guess, right? And then this is that, right? So it includes like this image or this div, which is another element as well as. I wonder why it doesn't count. It doesn't count the H4 or the P tag as like another element. It counts those as these things called text. So that's interesting. So child nodes returns a list of 9 things because it includes those texts. And children includes, wait, what? Oh, I clicked on this. And children includes 4 things, child nodes, right? So 4, 9, so that's kind of interesting. So this is probably what we want, right? Because we're only going to want to check, well, maybe not, because these text elements here might actually contain a class, right? Because couldn't this like H4, if I like edit this, couldn't this contain a like a benefit icon? Hopefully this doesn't screw something up over there. Oh, it kind of does. So, right, so if I look at that again, oh, whoops, I need to go back up to the row. Let's clear this out. It's weird that these things actually show, like when I hover over them, it shows their placement on the DOM, but these text elements don't. Don't really get why that is. Okay, so yeah, we'll have to come back to that. So let's look at some other things. So $children or child, replace child, remove child, has child nodes. True. Okay, so that might come in handy when we want to stop the loop, right? Because if an element doesn't have any children, that's when we know we've reached like the end of a certain subtree in the DOM, right? So it seems like what we want to implement here is we basically want to be able to start at the top at the document and recursively, it seems like it has to be a recursive solution, recursively go through the DOM and look at every element and its children and the children and children and children until we find elements that don't have children, and check all of those elements to see if they have the class name that was passed into our function, right? So here we have this function. We have to check each and every one of those if they have this class name. So this itself might probably include like another nested function where we actually do the iteration. So maybe out here we would have like some sort of like all. Let's write a function that gets all of the children of a certain tree, right? So if we had like a function like get all children so I'm trying to write something similar to, like if we click on this row and we write $0.children, it gives us these 4, like those 4 elements, right? These 4 elements. But what if those guys have their own elements, right? And it seems like they do, right? So this guy, who's one of the children, this thing, he has his own this icon that we hid, as well as an H4 tag, as well as a P tag. So what we ought to get, rather than just these 4, if we wrote if we had like a $all children function, is we'd want we'd want a flat list of every child, right? Of all the nested children. Um, Maybe that's the right step. We'll see here. So let's write a function all children. This seems like the hardest part, right? Because this is kind of going to be the recursive part. So we would want a node, right? And like a starting node, kind of. So we'd pass in the starting node, and we'd want it to return us. Let's call this actually get all children, and we're going to return all children, which is going to be some sort of list, right? This is an HTML collection. I feel like I'm just going to return an array, right? I know how to create an array. I just do this. I don't know how to create a new HTML collection. I mean, maybe it's just, is it just like new, is HTML collection just on here? HTML all collection. What's this? Illegal constructor. Right, yeah, like I'm not gonna fuss around with how to create a new one of those. I'm fine just returning an array. Okay, so this actually might need to exist outside of the loop. So maybe this would exist in our get elements by class name function. We'll see though. Oh no, it shouldn't have to, right? So right here we need a way to say like if. So let's write our stopping case, because maybe that's easier first. So if node dot has, what was it? 0 dot has child nodes, yeah. Has child nodes. Or actually, this would be our solution where we have to dive deeper, right? So we would say, so that wouldn't be our. Maybe we don't actually need an explicit case to stop the recursion. It's just if it didn't have any children, it would stop the recursion itself, right? So basically, we would only run the recursion in here. So if it has children nodes or has child nodes, it seems like what we would want to do is basically append those to this list of all children that we're keeping track of, right? So let's just say, it seems like we're, well, yeah, so like let's just say let all children is equal to an empty array at first, right? This is kind of assuming from the beginning that we're starting, you know, with no children. So we pass in the node has child nodes, and we say, let's just say, sure, okay, it has some children. So basically what we want to do is say all children is equal to all children dot concat. Ooh, this is going to be interesting, because all children's array, but node dot children was like that HTML element, right? So what we'd actually want is something like array dot from node dot children, or was it child nodes maybe? I forget which one we were going to use. Oops, do I have too many there? Right. So all children dot concat array from child nodes. Okay. So that should then update that list of children to include the current node's children, and then we also, what we want to do is call get all children of that node, right? Of that. Well, we actually want to call it on every child, so we'd have to do like node. Oh man, we'd have to do like array dot from node dot child nodes dot for. Would it be a for each, or would it be a array dot from child nodes dot, yeah, for each? Let's just say. Well, that won't return anything, so that's not helpful. If you want to map on this, for each child node, then we essentially want to call get all children of that child node. Yeah, that seems like it would make sense. The issue here seems to be around the fact that, so all children is an array at first, so then we concat some of the children in, and then we just loop over those child nodes and call get all children on that. The problem is now it's going to instantiate this again, right? So it seems like this would either have to be defined outside of the function so that it can be appended to or concatenated with the existing children, or what we'd have to do is like pass it in maybe as like an argument that we could keep track of through the recursion. Maybe we would have like all children is equal to an array up here, right? And then get all children, this would take in the existing, like this new all children. That's kind of confusing. If we maybe we copy it to like a new all children, right? So now we have just like a copy of the children, and then new all children is equal to all children dot concat child nodes, and then here we'd have new all children, right? And otherwise we just return the all children array because nothing happened to them. Seems like we could probably even localize this to just be created here, maybe, but we'll leave that at 1 for now. Okay, so the first time through, all children is an empty array. Then we come through, we find a node. It has, let's say, it has child nodes. New all children is just the empty array concatenated with an array from the child node children, or the node children, the node not child nodes. So now we just have an array of these child nodes, and now we're basically iterating over those child nodes and saying for each of those, for each child node, we want to also call get all children. New all children is that existing array that we append to if we find children. Otherwise we just return that array. I mean, it seems like this should work, right? I guess we'll find out here. Probably have some hiccups. So let's say get all children. Let's not do the whole DOM at first. Let's just do like this row. So $0, get all children, $0. Ooh, get all children is not. Oh, I misspelled it somewhere. Get all children. Okay. Oops, so it returns an empty array. Why is that? So we give it a node. Oh, we don't give it, oh no, all children should be an empty array at first. Copies that if node that has child nodes, which it does, right? If we do $0.has child nodes, the answer is true. So that should be true, and it should go into here. And new children should then be its children. Let's just console log this out, actually. New children. New all children. Right, what happens if we run this now? Oops. Get all children with $0. Okay, so it does spit them out. It's got these this collection of 9 things again. I don't know why it does it so many times specific to just these children. It's kind of interesting. So it doesn't seem like we're actually diving into any of those elements and returning them. Yeah, that's very interesting. So we're just looping over it a bunch of times, but looking at the exact same children. Oh wait, no we're not, are we? No. It's changing in how many elements it spits out each time, right? Or no, it's not. Sometimes it's 16 though, and sometimes it's 17. That's kind of interesting. Oh, there's that H4P. I don't know what these text elements are. Okay, so something's happening here. New all children does not seem to be precisely what we expect it to be. Weird that it's changing, but not actually finishing itself. Maybe, oh wait, maybe it's just new all children here that I'm missing. So what happens if I do it now? So that returns not actually what I was expecting. Let's remove that console log. That just returns one level deep, right? I think that's the same as calling $0.0.children, wasn't it? That's only 4, but what about child nodes? Yeah, it's the same thing. It's just one's an array and one's a node list, but it only went one level deep. Is there only one level? Maybe I'm crazy. No, it should have returned more than one level, shouldn't it? Is that what child nodes does? I suppose I could look that up. Child nodes. Does that return it recursively? Returns a live node list of child nodes of a given element where the first child node is assigned index 0. To get data from a node, the document object itself has 2 children. Child node includes... Oh, okay. Okay, child node includes all child nodes, including non-element nodes like text and comment nodes. That's pretty interesting. To get a collection of elements, use parent node.children instead. Okay, so I guess this is what we want to actually use. We want to use children. HTML collection, which is a live ordered list of the DOM elements, which are children of node. You can access the individual child nodes in the collection by using either the item method. Oh, look it, there's another way to access each element. Or by using JavaScript array style notation. Okay, so we're back here. Interesting. So we want to use children in our function, not child nodes. So let's say has child nodes. Maybe we just want to check children. Dot length is not equal to 0. Right, then we do node.children is what we'd like to append, or concat, and node.from array.children, map child node, get child node. Okay, so like those are actual elements now. Oops, I forgot to do, I didn't delete something. Oh, right there. It's still just those, or wait, get element, or get all children, $0. It's still just those 4, so it's still not going recursively is what it feels like. So we gotta have it go, we have to have it dive recursively here in order to get its children. How are we gonna do that? I thought that's what would have happened here if it had all its child nodes, right? Because we're in here. New all children is all children concatenated with those elements, and then we say array.from. This is probably some silly, stupid mistake. I'm being. It seems like I'm being dumb, right? We would actually want to. We'd want to return after this, right? Otherwise, we just return immediately. Like we call this function, but it seems like we would just come down here. I don't think we actually like recursively run through here. So maybe we actually do just want to after this calls. We just want to return. No, that doesn't make sense. Maybe we'd want to return this list, or no, we'd want to return. Why is it not calling it recursively, I guess is the question here. Or is it? Is it calling it recursively? We should probably put like a, let's say we put a debugger right here. Right, so now when I call it, we hit that debugger. All right, all children is just an empty array. Then I play it. All children, it's got all 4 of those guys in there. Okay, well, what's the node right now? Node is that first one. Okay, so it did work iteratively. Okay. So if it worked iteratively, the node.children is its children. Yeah, there's the div h4 and p. Okay, so children dot length does not equal to 0. Ought to be true. So that itself should dive again. And now node should probably be like this like icon. Yeah. And now node.children should be an empty collection, right? So the length should be false, and it should just return all children. Yeah, why is all children not defined? New all. Oh, what is all children? Okay, so all children here has all 7 of the things, right? There's the 4 top pieces. There's these 4 guys. So this is like, it's working, at least in the debugger here. It's just not, it's not fully applying it. So where were we? So that's kind of interesting. This is actually working more than I thought it was for it not to be working if we don't use the debugger. What node are we looking at? We're looking at that icon. So it should probably move to the h4 and then the p tag next. So this one should be h4, right? And then the p tag. Yeah. And what does all children look like now? Oh wait, I don't want to return this, do I? No, I copy that. It should be fine. It's still just those 7, so that makes sense because we're checking the children, right? And they end up, the node we're on now is p, which doesn't have any children. Or it's an empty child object or child list. So playing it again, now we should be on that second node, right? We should be on, or the second column, and we are. And then beyond its icon, or its image, and we are. And then on its h4. So this is kind of weird that it's doing this, and our all children should actually be, ooh, that's it, kind of interesting. So it didn't actually add those children, even though we're iterating over them right now, it didn't add them to, didn't add like this guy to our list of all children. Why not? It added it the first time. Huh. So if we step through this, what is node right now? So that this should return false, and it should just jump to the return statement. Yeah. Next time through is the p tag. The p tag, we should get the same thing, which means it should just jump through. But all children, now it's back to being 4. So it's not updating correctly is definitely what's happening. And I think I know why. I think it's because, so at some point we're kind of keeping track of the children accurately, but then we lose it, right? We lose track of it. Let's define this actually outside of here, right? Let's say that all children is out here, right? All children is equal to an empty array out here. Or let's exit out of this debugger real quick. And then let's say all children, okay. And then let's go back to our function declaration. Oh boy, where is it? And let's not keep track of this guy in here. Right, we're just gonna keep track of the node and search through everything. Right, and then we'll just return at the end, let's say. We're not gonna return, well, we'll return all children. But basically inside of here, we just want to update all children. We'll just mutate all the outer scope of this function. Dot or equals all children dot concat array dot from uh-oh, I think I got too many. No, that should be good. Node dot children. Okay. So we update all children, and then we keep mapping over these guys. We don't actually use this map. Probably doesn't need to be mapped. Probably could be a for each. The return statement here actually doesn't matter that much either, since we're just mutating it. So now if we look at all children, it's an empty array, and if we do if we do get all children of $0, what is $0 right now? It's that row. So this should be, I'm pretty sure it should be, how many elements should it be? So there's four of those little columns underneath. Right, so should it be 1, 2, 3, 4, and then each of those columns has 1, 2, 3 elements underneath. So it should be, so each column is like 4 total elements, so it should be 16. Our list should be 16 by the end. Okay, so if we run our function, get all children of $0, new all children is not defined. Where did I'm still calling it recursively with a non-existent variable now. Right. Okay, well, so that worked, more or less. There's 20 elements. Was I wrong or something? Does each one have... Were these added twice? Yeah, they were. That seems wrong. Why are they added twice? Is it because it must have been... Oh, yeah, it's definitely because it ran... it got through that, but when we got that error before about the new all children variable not existing, it had already appended some and mutated all children. This is the problem with mutating outside scope inside of the function. Identifier all children has already been oh yes, obviously. So we just wanna update it. Right, so now if I do it, I think it should be 16. Cool. And it is. Perfect. So it actually does work. For some reason when I was doing it, keeping track of it inside the function, it was not getting passed correctly. There's probably a way to do it, and it was probably a simple solution if I look back on the video. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know. I don't actually know. But the point is we have some of it working. So now I think we can just, we can write our function. Let's go back to here. Let's copy this. Oh my goodness. There we go. Let's copy this. You know what? I'm just gonna close these other guys. That makes things easy. Right, and then here is where we could probably keep track of, like, let all children is equal to an empty array, and now we could have got another function defined in here. Or let's copy our let's copy our function that we had before, this guy. We can clean it up a little bit. Delete that comment is what I meant by that. And put him inside of this function get elements by class name. Oh, good. It just didn't keep any of the correct indentation. Right? Is that all right? I think that works. So above here is where we would declare this, like, let all children. This is what used to be just on the global, and we are mutating. Now we're just mutating it internally, which, you know, maybe it's still not great. Maybe, well, I don't know how you get around it, because actually this is what we want to return. So this guy actually doesn't matter what we return, since we are mutating something above. It's actually this guy that we're interested in. So this is return all children at the end here. Right, so it's an empty array at first. Okay, so so if we ran this right now, we basically get a well, it doesn't. It would have to start with. I suppose we'd have to start this with document. Right. Oh boy, this, I don't know if this function's gonna run right. Let's try it. Get elements by class name. Benefit icon gonna start at the very top. Let's see. Oh my god, it didn't work. Why not? I think this might be wrong. Let's say it's $0 for right now. Where $0 is our something. Is our row. Why is that not working? It doesn't matter what this thing is. It should just, I was just expecting it to return every child, right? Seems like we should just be, oh, what am I doing? We never actually call this. Okay, so what we actually want to do is define this, and then we need to invoke this at least once to kick off the recursive chain. So, or the recursive calling. So get all children from, again, we could start it from document. All right, fine. Let's see how long it takes. Right, so get all children from the document. Here's all children that should run recursively and eventually return us our list at the end. When we call it, it returns us everything, right? I think this is just, actually it was very quick. It returns us everything that's just every element that's on this entire DOM, right? The entire page, because we started at an element. I think if we did it from $0 here instead of document, where $0 is our row, then doing this should get us those 16 elements. Yeah, cool, right? So now the last step would just be to scope this by only looking, like only appending elements or only mutating elements here, or only appending to all children. Oh yeah, I suppose I could be doing this inside of this for each, right? I could be appending like each child. I don't know why I separated those two things. But we only want to append children that match our class name, right? So we need to check their class list and check that it includes something. I want to see, does this thing have string.includes? Yes. And if I don't think that's actually what this thing was before, though, like the class list, right? So class list. Yeah, it's like DOM token list. So we'd probably have to do another array.from if we wanted to check like includes. Yes, includes columns true. So we want to look for our class name with that though. So yeah, let's actually do this. This will be a little bit cleaner. I think I can do it this way. So we want to call that recursively, but we also before then want to say all children dot push. All right, so here's where we want to make the check. So if array.from child node.class list, let's pull this out into its own variable. So const includes class name means we check array.from child node.class list dot includes, let's pull this over a little bit to get ourselves a little more space, includes class name, right? So if such a thing exists, if includes like node includes, say node includes, if the node includes class name, then what we want to do is actually push it onto all children. All children dot push child node. And then we can get rid of doing that outside up here. I think that should work. Looks a little scrunched here inside of the Chrome Dev Tools, so it's never fun programming outside of your own IDE, you know? So we also respect that with candidates. We know that this is not normally where you spend every day programming. You kind of miss out on linting, you miss out on, it does give you some autocomplete, and I think now it gives you proper indentation, although we saw copy paste indentation doesn't work, but I digress. Right, let's run through it one more time. So all children objects, we start with $0. I guess we're going to start with document for now. And essentially then it runs through this, recursively checks for every array, or excuse me, every node, and checks if it has children, and checks if those have children and those have children. And if it finds a child that in its class list, it includes the class name that we initially gave it, then we go ahead and push that onto our all children array, right? We mutate our array to include a new element at the end. By the very end, by the time we reach here, it seems like all our all children should be full of or hydrated with a list of elements that have our class name. Whew, let's try it. So there's our function. Get elements by class name benefit icon. Uh-oh. There's 5 in there. Oh, we added it to this H4. So let's remove this guy. Let's all right, so here we go. So like I was gonna say, let's bring back these icons so that they're not opacity 0. So here's our real chance. So this is a this does return a function, right? So now we even get that, now that we've implemented our own function correctly, right? And it does indeed return us our proper things, right? Very similar to get element by class name benefit icon here. It returns us, our implementation returns us an array. This is an HTML collection. So our implementation gives us the benefit of just being able to call something like .map directly on it, right? And then we can say node, and then maybe say node dot, I forget what we did. Did we change the opacity? Yeah. So node dot styles dot opacity is equal to 1. Boom. Wait. Why didn't that work? Oh, style. There we go. Cool. So that's an implementation, right? I mean, we did it. We got the, it pretty much works exactly the same. Except ours returns an array. If they asked me to return an HTML collection, I'd be like, show me how. Because I don't know how to use this global function. HTML, I don't know what these things are, right? Like they look like functions that I ought to be able to run, but I just can't. I'm not allowed. I must be doing something wrong. Okay, so we passed question 2. Cool. Question 3, we would now like you to implement a more performant version of get element by class names. By class name. Oops, I'm not gonna fuck with it. Oh. Which accepts an element as an argument. Okay, so this is, yeah, so this is where they were talking, rather than it just starting at the document, you know, maybe if we already know the subtree that our classes belong to, we can just start from there. Very similar to how we did before, where we did like $0.get element by class name, right? Get elements by class name, right? It exists on all the nodes, not just the document. I mean, the document is a node too. So it wants us to give us the opportunity to pass in an element. Like document.body or any other element that we see fit. Okay, that shouldn't be too bad. I mean, we already really have kind of done that in our solution, right? So we have document here, so it really would just be like element, and now that as a first argument ought to be writable, right? So if we do $0, well, that's not going to give us anything. So let's do $row. $0 is this row, which should give us those 16 children elements. So if we did get elements by class name, $0, benefit, what was it? Benefit, man, benefit icon. I'm struggling with this. Right, it works the exact same. Cool. And then if we pass in document, it should obviously work too. Document.body, right? It all works. Document works. They all work. Awesome. So that's all 3 parts of the challenge. I actually don't know how long it took. Maybe I went over an hour. Maybe I didn't solve the challenge in a long enough time. I also spent some time delineating certain ways of going about things like iterating over an HTML collection or a node list. Maybe I would have saved time by not doing that, but this also, I wasn't trying to make it fit. I was just trying to implement it how I would, because I know I'm not going to be able to perfectly replicate an interview experience. An interview is going to be interviewee is going to feel much more on edge. They're going to feel more uncomfortable. They know that someone's watching them. So, they have a lot more stress than I had making a simple video. But I hope that at least gives a little bit more insight into how I might go about solving the challenge. And maybe we'll do this again for this promise. This might be a little one. Well, this I haven't done it in a long time, right? I haven't implemented anything to do myself. I haven't implemented anything to do with promise.all by scratch or from scratch. So we could do that one in another video. But yeah, hope that kind of helped shed some light on maybe some of the challenges that we've seen candidates face on this challenge, and maybe ways to overcome those or think critically about them, and how you might go about solving it. So thanks for watching.